I am Amanda, 42 years old, and I have never seen my son Jason look so broken. Standing in my parents' living room on Christmas Eve, I watched his shoulders slump as my father uttered those cruel words about his medical school acceptance. My relationship with my parents has always been complicated, but that night crossed an unforgivable line. When Dad declared losers are not welcome for Christmas, something inside me finally snapped. Years of conditioning to keep the peace shattered in that moment. I chose my son. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to your family for someone you love. To understand why that Christmas Eve erupted into such a painful confrontation, you need to know about my family. My parents, Harold and Eleanor Wilson, built their entire identities around achievement and status. Growing up in their pristine suburban home in Connecticut meant constant pressure to excel. My father was a successful cardiac surgeon at a prestigious hospital, and my mother served on multiple charity boards while maintaining the perfect household. From kindergarten report cards to high school extracurriculars, every accomplishment was measured against an impossible standard. When I brought home an A-, the question was always, why not an A+? When I won second place in the science fair, they wondered aloud why I had not taken first. Their love always felt conditional, tied directly to my performance. The Wilsons are exceptional, my father would say, whenever I showed signs of being merely average. Mediocrity is for other families. My childhood bedroom walls were decorated not with posters of bands or movie stars, but with framed awards and honor roll certificates. My mother scheduled my life down to 15-minute increments, filling every moment with tutoring, music lessons, and academic competitions. There was no room for simple childhood joy, only the relentless pursuit of excellence. I rebelled in my sophomore year of college by falling in love with Michael, an art major with dreams of teaching. He was kind, funny, and completely unimpressed by status or family name. My parents hated him immediately. He will never amount to anything, my father declared after our first family dinner together. And if you choose him, neither will you. I married Michael anyway at 22. Partly because I truly loved him, and partly to escape my parents' suffocating expectations. They attended our modest wedding with tight smiles and cold eyes, making their disapproval known to everyone. Throughout our marriage, they subtly undermined us at every opportunity, questioning Michael's career choice, our apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, and eventually our parenting decisions. When Jason was born 18 years ago, I vowed to raise him differently. I wanted him to know unconditional love, to understand that his worth was not tied to his achievements. Michael and I created a home where effort mattered more than results, where kindness trumped competition. Our marriage ended when Jason was 8, not because of my parents' constant interference, though that certainly did not help, but because Michael and I ultimately wanted different things. The divorce was amicable, and we remained committed co-parents. Michael moved to Oregon for a teaching position 4 years ago, staying involved in Jason's life through regular video calls and summer visits. As a single mother working as a physical therapist, I struggled financially at times, but Jason never lacked what truly mattered. He grew into a compassionate, thoughtful young man, with a genuine desire to help others. His dream of becoming a doctor formed not from pressure, but from his natural empathy. He volunteered at our local hospital throughout high school, finding true purpose in comforting patients. Jason is not the top-performing student my parents wanted in a grandson. He studies hard, but is not naturally gifted in academics, the way my sister's son Kyle is. Jason had to work twice as hard for his B+ average, and every accomplishment came through persistence rather than ease. When senior year arrived and college applications began, Jason set his sights on medical school as his ultimate goal. He applied to 15 undergraduate programs with good pre-med tracks ranging from reach schools to safety options. My parents immediately asked about Ivy League applications, barely concealing their disappointment when Jason explained his more realistic approach. "Your cousin Kyle is applying to Harvard and Johns Hopkins," my mother reminded him during a Sunday dinner 3 months ago. "Have you considered aiming higher?" What they failed to recognize was that Jason was already aiming high for his capabilities. He had researched programs that would support his learning style and found schools where he could thrive rather than merely survive. When his acceptance letter came from his backup school, a perfectly respectable state university with a good medical program, I was bursting with pride. Jason was pursuing his dreams on his own terms. My parents, predictably, were less enthusiastic. "I suppose it is better than community college," my father said. When Jason shared his news, the faint praise cutting deeper than outright criticism. I had spent years trying to balance my relationship with my parents while protecting Jason from their impossible standards. I encouraged holiday visits and regular family dinners, believing that despite their flaws, family connections were important. Looking back, I see I was still seeking their approval, still hoping they might eventually see the wonderful person Jason had become, rather than the accolades he had not achieved. That misguided hope led us right to their doorstep last Christmas Eve, unwittingly walking into a situation that would finally force me to choose between pleasing my parents and protecting my son. The Christmas season always brought a mixture of anticipation and dread. For 20-plus years, holiday celebrations centered around my parents' expansive colonial home in Westchester County. The tradition was non-negotiable, with extended family traveling from various states to maintain the picture-perfect Wilson family Christmas. This particular year, I felt more apprehensive than usual. Jason had just received his college acceptance letters, and I knew my parents would turn the holiday into an academic performance review. My sister Barbara and her husband George would be there with their son Kyle, who had recently been accepted early decision to Princeton, with plans to apply to top medical schools afterward. "Do we really have to go, Mom?" Jason asked 3 weeks before Christmas as we hung lights around our modest apartment windows. "Grandpa and Grandma always make me feel like I am not good enough." "They love you in their own way," I said automatically. The same excuse I had been making for years. And Christmas is about family. Even as I said those words, I felt their hollowness. The truth was more complicated. Part of me still craved my parents' approval, still hoped for the warm family relations I had never experienced. Another part feared the consequences of breaking tradition, the phone calls and guilt trips and family fallout that would inevitably follow. Besides, I added more honestly, we only need to stay 2 nights. We can handle anything for 2 nights. The text messages and phone calls began ramping up early December. My mother sent detailed instructions about appropriate attire for Christmas dinner, while my father inquired about Jason's final grades for the semester. Every conversation contained subtle digs and comparisons. "Kyle received straight A's again," my mother mentioned during one call. "Such a bright future ahead of him. And how is Jason doing with his classes?" "He is doing well," I answered, deliberately vague. "He is very excited about starting college next fall." "At State University," she said, the pause before naming the school speaking volumes about her opinion. "Well, I suppose he can always transfer if he applies himself." I changed the subject quickly, but these interactions left me tense and defensive. After one particularly difficult call, I found Jason in his room staring at his acceptance letter. "Maybe I should have tried harder," he said quietly. "Applied to better schools." "You applied to the right schools for you," I assured him, sitting beside him on his bed. "And you are going to be an amazing doctor someday. Do not let anyone tell you different." He nodded, but I could see the self-doubt creeping in, planted by my parents' casual dismissals. This was exactly what I had tried to protect him from throughout his childhood, the feeling that he was somehow deficient because he did not meet impossible standards. As Christmas approached, Jason grew increasingly quiet. He spent hours researching his chosen university as if gathering ammunition to defend his choice. He practiced answers to questions he anticipated from his grandparents. The carefree teenager disappeared, replaced by someone bracing for judgment. "It will be fine," I promised the night before our trip, helping him pack his bag. "Your accomplishments are worth celebrating, and anyone who cannot see that is missing something wonderful." He gave me a skeptical look, but continued packing. We both knew I was being optimistic at best, delusional at worst. The morning of Christmas Eve dawned gray and cold. We loaded our luggage and carefully wrapped gifts into my 7-year-old Honda and began the 2-hour drive to my parents' house. Jason wore headphones for most of the journey, staring out at the winter landscape while I rehearsed positive responses to the inevitable criticisms. "Remember when you used to get so excited about going to Grandma and Grandpa's for Christmas?" I asked during a stop for coffee, trying to lighten the mood. "Yeah, before I understood what they really thought of me," he replied, stirring his hot chocolate without looking up. His words stung with truth. When Jason was little, before academic performance became the measuring stick, my parents had been different with him, more patient and loving. He had basked in their attention, then too young to recognize the conditional nature of their affection. As we turned onto the maple-lined street where I grew up, I noticed Jason's posture change, his shoulders tensing as he sat straighter in his seat. I reached over to squeeze his hand. "2 days," I reminded him. "And then we will have our own Christmas celebration at home." The large house came into view, decked with professional-grade decorations and twinkling with perfect white lights. 3 luxury cars already lined the circular driveway, announcing that other family members had arrived before us. "Here we go," Jason murmured, as I parked behind my sister's Mercedes. I had no idea then that this Christmas would be different from all the others, that the carefully maintained facade of family harmony was about to shatter completely. Had I known what awaited us inside those perfectly decorated walls, I might have turned the car around and driven home. Instead, we gathered our bags and gifts and walked up the salted pathway to the front door, stepping directly into the confrontation that would change everything. My mother opened the door wearing a cashmere sweater and pearls, her silver hair perfectly styled. "Amanda, Jason, you are finally here. Everyone is already in the living room." The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, professionally decorated with tasteful ornaments and garlands. Nothing was ever out of place in my parents' home, including the people within it. "Hi, Grandma," Jason said, accepting her brief hug. Her eyes immediately went to his hair, slightly longer than she preferred, but she held her criticism for the moment. "Let me take your coats," she said, gesturing toward the coat closet. "Your father is mixing drinks in the living room." We followed her through the foyer into the large living room where my father stood at the antique bar cart preparing his famous holiday old fashions. My sister Barbara sat on the sofa with her husband George, while aunts, uncles, and cousins clustered in conversation groups around the 12-foot Christmas tree. "There they are," my father announced, not moving to greet us. "Amanda, what can I get you to drink, Jason? There is eggnog, non-alcoholic, of course." The room quieted briefly as family members turned to acknowledge our arrival. Hugs and pleasantries were exchanged, the usual comments about how much Jason had grown and how long it had been since we had all been together. Beneath the warmth ran an undercurrent of evaluation, everyone noting our less expensive clothes and my simple hairstyle compared to my sister's salon, perfect appearance. "Where is Kyle Jason?" asked, looking around for his cousin. "Oh, he is arriving a bit later," Barbara answered, her voice tinged with importance. He had a breakfast meeting with a Princeton alumni who is on the admissions board at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Networking, you know? And there it was. The first comparison of the day served up before we had even settled in. I felt Jason stiffen beside me, but he managed a polite nod. The next hour passed in deceptive pleasantness, as we caught up with relatives and accepted congratulations on Jason's college acceptance, though each came with the subtle qualifier. State University has a nice campus, or, that is a good school for his situation. When the doorbell rang around 5:30, my mother hurried to answer it, with an excitement she had not shown for our arrival. Kyle entered like visiting royalty, tall and confident, in a designer sweater. His smile practiced and perfect. "Sorry I am late, everyone," he announced. "That meeting ran long, but it was worth it. Dr. Harrington thinks I have an excellent chance at Johns Hopkins for medical school." My parents beamed with vicarious pride. Come in, my father urged, handing him a glass of eggnog. "Tell us everything about Princeton." The next 30 minutes became the Kyle show, as my nephew held court describing his early acceptance, his anticipated pre-med track, and the multiple medical school options available to someone with his stellar academic record. My parents gazed at him adoringly, while Barbara and George nodded with practiced modesty at their son's achievements. Jason sat quietly beside me, becoming smaller and less visible by the minute. I placed my hand on his knee, a silent reminder that I saw him, even if no one else did. "Dinner is served," my mother eventually announced, leading everyone to the formal dining room, where the table gleamed with fine china and crystal. We took our assigned seats, placed cards written in my mother's elegant calligraphy. Jason found himself directly across from Kyle, a positioning that felt deliberate in its cruelty. The meal began with my father's traditional Christmas toast to family excellence and bright futures. The conversation throughout dinner inevitably circled back to college plans. After the main course had been served and the initial food compliments exchanged, my father turned his attention to the younger generation. "So, Kyle, Princeton, early decision. Impressive. Your grandfather would have been proud to see another Wilson at an Ivy League school." Kyle nodded, accepting the praise as his due. "I am thinking of double majoring in biochemistry and economics. Dr. Harrington says medical schools look for candidates with diverse academic backgrounds." "Excellent strategy," my father agreed. "And what about you, Jason? What is your plan at, remind me which school you settled on?" The pause was slight, but noticeable. My father knew exactly which school Jason had chosen. The pretense of forgetfulness was just another way to diminish his achievement. "State University," Jason answered, his voice steady, despite the tension I could feel radiating from him. "They have a strong science program, and I have been accepted into their pre-med track." "State University," my father repeated, exchanging a glance with my mother. "Well, I suppose it is a starting point, though I cannot imagine any top-tier medical schools recruiting heavily from there." "Actually," Jason said, finding a momentary courage, "they have a good acceptance rate for medical school applicants. And I have already been accepted into their guaranteed admission medical program if I maintain a 3.5 GPA. Instead of acknowledging this achievement, my father frowned. "Guaranteed admission? To their own medical school, you mean? That is hardly the same as earning your way into a top program." "Harold," I interjected, "the program is very competitive. Less than 5% of applicants are accepted." My father waved his hand dismissively. "Amanda, let us be realistic. There are medical schools, and then there are medical schools. Kyle here is on track for Johns Hopkins or Harvard. That is the difference between becoming a rural clinic doctor and being a leading specialist." Kyle smirked across the table. "No offense, Jason, but state medical school does not even crack the top 50 rankings. This is just embarrassing." The table went silent for a moment before my father leaned forward, swirling his wineglass thoughtfully, before delivering the blow that would change everything. "Let me be clear," he said, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he had used throughout my childhood. "In this family, we strive for excellence, not mediocrity. Losers are not welcome for Christmas. If you cannot compete at the highest levels, perhaps you should reconsider your ambitions altogether." The room froze. Even my mother, who typically enabled my father's worst behavior, looked uncomfortable. Jason's face flushed deep red, then drained of all color. Without a word, he placed his napkin beside his plate and pushed back his chair. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his voice barely controlled. He walked from the dining room with careful dignity, his back straight, despite the emotional blow. I sat in shocked silence for perhaps 5 seconds before the rage began to build within me. My father had already moved on, asking my uncle about his new boat as if he had not just devastated his grandson. "I should check on Jason," I said, standing up. "Oh, let him sulk," my sister Barbara commented. "He needs to develop thicker skin if he is going to make it in medicine anyway." I ignored her and followed Jason upstairs. I found him in the guest room, assigned to us, methodically packing his overnight bag. "I am sorry," I whispered, closing the door behind me. What he said was cruel and completely untrue. Jason did not look up. "Can we please go home? I do not want to be here anymore." In that moment, watching my son pack to escape his own family on Christmas Eve, something fundamental shifted inside me. This was not just another uncomfortable holiday to endure. This was active emotional harm being inflicted on my child, and I had been allowing it for years. I sat on the edge of the bed and took Jason's hands, stilling his packing motion. "I am so sorry," I said again this time, with deeper meaning. "Not just for tonight, but for every time I have brought you here, knowing how they make you feel." Jason finally looked at me, his eyes red, rimmed, but dry. "It is not your fault, Mom. They are your parents. I know you want us to have a relationship with them." His maturity in that moment, his concern for my feelings, even while nursing his own wounds, broke something open inside me. How many times had I prioritized keeping peace with my parents over protecting my son's self-worth? How long had I been forcing him to endure their judgment in the name of family obligation? I suddenly remembered myself at his age crying in this very house after my father had belittled my choice of college major. "Psychology is for people who cannot handle real science," he had declared at my high school graduation dinner. My mother had simply patted my hand and suggested I reconsider pre-med. No one had stood up for me then. "Wait here," I told Jason, standing up with newfound resolve. "I need to say something downstairs, and then we are leaving." "Mom, please do not make a scene," Jason pleaded. "It will only make things worse." "I am not making a scene, I promised. But I am not letting this continue." I returned to the dining room, where conversation had resumed dessert, now being served as if nothing had happened. My father was in the middle of a story about a colleague's unsuccessful surgical technique when I took my seat. "Where is Jason?" my mother asked, passing me a slice of her famous Yule log cake. "Dessert will cheer him up." I placed my napkin in my lap, took a deep breath, and spoke in a calm, measured voice. "Jason is packing. We are going to leave." The table went silent again. My father put down his fork with deliberate slowness. "Do not be ridiculous, Amanda. It is Christmas Eve. The boy needs to learn to take constructive criticism." "Constructive criticism," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "You called my son a loser. You belittled his accomplishments and his future. There was nothing constructive about it." I simply stated facts, my father insisted. If he cannot handle reality, perhaps medicine is not for him after all. My sister Barbara nodded in agreement. Really, Amanda? You have always coddled him. Kyle has never needed such protection because he actually achieves at a high level. I turned to look at my nephew, who had the decency to appear slightly uncomfortable, though not enough to defend his cousin. The reality, I said, addressing the entire table, is that Jason is a compassionate, dedicated young man who has worked incredibly hard to pursue his dreams. He has been accepted into a competitive medical program because of his character and perseverance. Those qualities will make him an excellent doctor, the kind who actually cares about his patients rather than just his reputation. My mother reached for my hand. Dear, I know you want to believe in Jason's potential, but Harold is simply being practical. Not everyone is destined for greatness. Her words, intended to sound kind, revealed the fundamental problem. In their world, anything less than prestigious excellence was failure. There was no value in ordinary goodness, in quiet competence, in being a decent human being without accolades. We are leaving, I repeated, standing up. Jason deserves to spend Christmas with people who value him for who he is, not who they think he should be. My father's face darkened with anger. If you walk out that door on Christmas Eve, do not expect to be welcomed back next year. The threat hung in the air, heavy, with decades of conditional love and emotional manipulation. In previous years, it would have worked. I would have apologized, convinced Jason to return to the table, and we would have endured the rest of the holiday in uncomfortable silence. Not this time. That is your choice, I said simply. But I am choosing my son. I walked out of the dining room amid protests and recriminations. Upstairs, Jason had finished packing both our bags. Are we really leaving? He asked, surprise and relief battling in his expression. Yes, we are. Christmas is about love and acceptance, not judgment and competition. We deserve better than this. We carried our bags downstairs, where several family members had gathered in the foyer, alerted to the drama unfolding. My mother approached with pleading eyes. Amanda, please be reasonable. It is snowing outside, and it is Christmas Eve. Where will you even go? Home, I answered, reaching for our coats. To our apartment, where people are valued for their character, not their achievements. My father appeared in the archway, his face set in the disapproving expression I had feared my entire life. If you leave now, you are choosing to divide this family at Christmas. I helped Jason into his coat before meeting my father's gaze directly. No, Dad. You divided this family when you decided your grandson was not good enough to be part of it. We walked out into the snowy night, loaded our bags into the car, and pulled away from the house that had never truly felt like home. In the passenger seat, Jason sat in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. I cannot believe you did that, he finally said as we reached the highway. Left your whole family on Christmas Eve because of me. Not because of you, I corrected him. Because of them. Because what they did was wrong, and I should have stood up to them years ago. The drive home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Something had shifted between us, a new understanding that we were truly on the same team. For the first time in my life, I had chosen what was right over what was expected, and the relief was overwhelming. As we pulled into our apartment complex, the reality of our situation hit me. Our apartment was undecorated, the refrigerator nearly empty. We had planned to return on December 26th. Now we faced a bleak Christmas morning, with no preparations. I am sorry about Christmas, I said, as we carried our bags inside. We can try to make the best of it tomorrow. Jason surprised me by smiling, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Honestly, Mom, this is already the best Christmas I have had in years. Our apartment felt eerily quiet after the charged atmosphere we had left behind. No Christmas tree stood in our living room, no stockings hung by our small electric fireplace. We had skipped decorating our own home, assuming we would enjoy my parents' elaborate display instead. I guess we could watch Christmas movies, I suggested, setting our bags down. I think there are some cookies in the pantry we could heat up. Jason checked the time on his phone. It is only 8:30. Is anything still open? I thought for a moment. The supermart on Marshall Street is open until 10 on Christmas Eve. Let us go, Jason said with sudden enthusiasm. We can get some decorations and food, create our own Christmas. His resilience amazed me. After being humiliated and rejected by his family, he was ready to build something new rather than wallow in hurt. I grabbed my purse and car keys, grateful for his positive spirit. The supermart was nearly deserted when we arrived, with just a few other last-minute shoppers hurrying through the aisles. The holiday section had been picked over, but we managed to find a small, tabletop artificial tree, a string of multicolored lights, and a package of shiny ball ornaments. Look, Jason called from another aisle. They still have Christmas stockings, and they are on sale. We filled our cart with holiday essentials and comfort foods. Cinnamon rolls for breakfast, ingredients for a simple turkey dinner, candy canes, and hot chocolate mix. In the nearly empty bakery section, we found the last chocolate peppermint cake, with a 50% off sticker. This is going to be great, Jason said, as we loaded our treasures onto the checkout conveyor belt. The cashier, a middle-aged man with a name tag reading Darren, looked at our haul with curiosity. Last-minute Christmas shopping, he asked, scanning our items. More like starting from scratch, I explained. Change of plans. Darren nodded sympathetically. I understand that. I am working tomorrow anyway. My family is all in Florida. That is too bad, Jason said, having to work on Christmas. It is not so bad, Darren shrugged. Double pay, and my cat does not know what day it is anyway. As he bagged our items, Darren reached under the counter and pulled out a small poinsettia plant. This was supposed to be part of the store display, but we are closing soon. Would you like to have it? No charge. That would be wonderful, I said, touched by the small kindness. Merry Christmas, Darren said, as we gathered our bags. Hope you too make it special. In the car, Jason turned to me with a thoughtful expression. We should have invited him to join us tomorrow. He is going to be alone. His compassion, even after what he had just experienced, filled me with pride. That is a lovely thought. But I have another idea. When we got home, I called my best friend Stephanie while Jason began setting up our impromptu decorations. Stephanie had invited us to join her family's Christmas dinner before we had committed to my parents, and I hoped the offer might still stand. Amanda, is everything okay? Stephanie answered concern in her voice at the late call. I gave her the abbreviated version of our evening, trying to keep my voice steady. So we are home now, and I was wondering if your invitation for Christmas dinner is still open. Of course it is, Stephanie said without hesitation. We would love to have you both. Come around 2 tomorrow. And Amanda, I am proud of you for standing up to them. After hanging up, I helped Jason arrange our modest decorations. The small tree looked charming on our coffee table, decorated with the colorful lights and ornaments. We hung the stockings on our bookshelf and placed the poinsettia in the center of our dining table. We need to wrap presents, Jason suddenly realized. Everything is in gift bags at Grandma's house. I have some wrapping paper in the closet from last year, I told him. And honestly, the best gift has already been given. We chose each other over toxic family dynamics. We stayed up late, transforming our apartment into a cozy Christmas haven. We made paper snowflakes to hang in the windows and found Christmas music on my phone to play through our small speaker. By midnight, our modest space felt more genuinely festive than my parents' perfectly styled home ever had. "Merry Christmas, Mom Jason," said, hugging me before heading to bed. "Thank you for what you did tonight." I slept more peacefully than I had in years, free from the anxiety that usually accompanied family holidays. In the morning, we lounged in our pajamas, baked cinnamon rolls, and exchanged the few small gifts we had brought home with us. The simplicity felt refreshing after years of elaborate but emotionally strained celebrations. At 2 o'clock, we arrived at Stephanie's house, carrying our chocolate peppermint cake. Her home was nothing like my parents', a cheerfully cluttered space filled with handmade decorations and the sound of children laughing. Her husband Tom greeted us with warm hugs, and their 3 teenagers immediately pulled Jason into their video game tournament. "Make yourselves at home," Stephanie said, handing me a glass of wine in the kitchen. "Nothing fancy here, just good food and people who actually like each other." Throughout the afternoon, I watched Jason relax and open up with Stephanie's family. When the conversation turned to college plans, he mentioned his acceptance to State University's guaranteed medical program. "That is amazing," Tom said genuinely. "Those programs are incredibly competitive. You must have really impressed them." "My advisor says they look for well-rounded students with strong service backgrounds," Jason explained, standing taller as he spoke. "I have been volunteering at Mercy Hospital since sophomore year." "A doctor with actual bedside manner," Stephanie's father commented from his recliner. "Now that is something the world needs more of." No one questioned his choice of school or compared him to anyone else. His accomplishment was celebrated for what it was, a significant achievement worthy of praise. By the end of the evening, Jason was laughing and joking, the wounded look completely gone from his eyes. As we drove home that night, full of good food and genuine connection, Jason turned to me with a serious expression. "Mom, I want you to know that I am okay. About what Grandpa said. He is wrong, and I know that now." "He is very wrong," I confirmed, "and I am sorry it took me so long to say that out loud." "Better late than never," Jason said, with a small smile. We had survived Christmas Day. Not just survived, but found joy in unexpected places. The healing had begun, but I knew there would be fallout from my decision to leave on Christmas Eve. My parents were not people who accepted defiance gracefully, and they had likely spent the day crafting their response. Sure enough, when we arrived home, my phone showed 12 missed calls and 23 text messages. The family crisis I had created by standing up for my son was just beginning to unfold. For 3 days after Christmas, I let the calls go to voicemail and the texts unread. Jason and I enjoyed a peaceful break, watching movies, playing board games, and planning for his college orientation in June. The distance from my family's drama felt like a weight lifted from both our shoulders. "Are you going to call them back?" Jason asked on the 4th day, nodding toward my phone as it lit up with my mother's name for the 3rd time that morning. "Eventually," I sighed. "But I am enjoying the break from explaining myself." My sister had sent several messages, alternating between guilt trips. "You ruined Christmas for everyone," and attempts at reconciliation. "We can fix this if you just apologize." My father predictably had not reached out directly, instead using my mother as his ambassador. On December 30th, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway, my father looking impatient and my mother anxious. "It is Grandma and Grandpa," I told Jason, who was reading on the couch. "You do not have to talk to them if you do not want to." "It is okay," he said, closing his book. "I am not afraid of them anymore." His quiet confidence gave me strength as I opened the door. My parents stood awkwardly in the threshold, looking out of place in our modest apartment building. My mother held a shopping bag, with what appeared to be wrapped gifts inside. "May we come in?" she asked, her voice carrying forced pleasantness. "We have been trying to reach you." I stepped aside to let them enter, noting how my father surveyed our small living room with barely concealed disapproval. The Christmas decorations were still up, our little tabletop tree twinkling in the corner. "Hello, Jason," my mother said, moving to hug him. He accepted the embrace stiffly. My father merely nodded in his direction. "We brought your Christmas gifts," my mother explained, setting the shopping bag on our coffee table. "And we need to talk about what happened." "Yes, we do," I agreed, gesturing for them to sit. What happened was completely unacceptable. My father's eyebrows rose at my direct approach. He was used to me eventually backing down, apologizing to keep the peace, even when I had done nothing wrong. "Amanda," he began in his authoritative tone, "your behavior on Christmas Eve was embarrassing and immature. Leaving a family dinner over a simple comment about academic standards shows a concerning lack of perspective." "A simple comment," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "You called your grandson a loser and told him he was not welcome in your home." "I did not say that exactly," my father countered, though we all knew he had. "I was merely expressing concern about his academic choices. As his grandfather, I have a right to push him toward excellence." My mother jumped in, her voice conciliatory. "What your father means is that we want the best for Jason. Perhaps his delivery was harsh, but his intentions were good." I looked at Jason, who sat quietly observing the conversation, then back at my parents. Good intentions do not excuse harmful behavior. Jason is a young adult who has made thoughtful decisions about his future. He deserves respect, not condescension. "Respect is earned," my father insisted. "In this family, we have standards." "No," I said firmly. "In a healthy family, respect is given freely. Love is unconditional. What you are describing is not family, it is a meritocracy." My mother looked distressed at the direction of the conversation. "Amanda, please. We came here to resolve this situation. Christmas was ruined for everyone. Your aunts and uncles were very concerned." "I am concerned too," I replied. "Concerned that my son has spent years feeling judged and diminished by the people who should be his biggest supporters." "We have supported him," my father argued. "Who paid for his SAT prep courses? Who connected him with my colleagues for those hospital volunteer positions?" "Financial support and connections are not the same as emotional support," I explained. "When was the last time you told Jason you were proud of him? When did you ever celebrate his achievements without comparing him to someone else?" My father scoffed. "This generation and their need for constant praise. In my day, we did not expect trophies for doing what was expected of us." Jason, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "This is not about trophies or praise, Grandpa. It is about basic respect. I worked really hard to get into this medical program. It might not be Harvard, but it is the right place for me." "You could have aimed higher," my father insisted, barely looking at Jason. "A Wilson should be at the top, not settling for mediocrity." "That is enough," I said, standing up. "You clearly have not come here to apologize or make amends. You came to continue the same harmful patterns." My mother reached for my hand. "Amanda, please. Family should be together on holidays. This rift is unnecessary. If Jason is sensitive about his college choice, we can simply avoid discussing it next year." Her suggestion that Jason was the problem, that his sensitivity rather than their cruelty, was the issue, clarified everything for me. "Mom, Dad, I need to be very clear," I said, looking them both in the eyes. "If you want a relationship with Jason and me going forward, things need to change. no more comparisons, no more demeaning comments disguised as high standards, no more conditional love based on achievements. My father stood up, his patience clearly exhausted. This is ridiculous. We have done nothing but support this family even after you divorced Michael and chose this lifestyle. He gestured dismissively at our apartment. I am successful and happy, I countered. My son is kind, hard-working, and on his way to becoming a compassionate doctor. If you cannot see the value in that, then perhaps we do need space from this relationship. Are you giving us an ultimatum? My father demanded. I am setting boundaries, I corrected. Something I should have done years ago. My mother was now openly distressed. Harold, please. We are losing them. My father looked between us, seemingly unable to comprehend that his authority was being challenged so directly. Fine. If you want to throw away family tradition and obligation over hurt feelings, that is your choice. But do not come back later expecting things to be the same. I do not want things to be the same, I said quietly. That is the point. They left shortly after, my mother hugging me tearfully at the door, while my father waited impatiently in the hallway. The shopping bag of gifts remained untouched on our coffee table. When the door closed behind them, Jason let out a long breath. That was intense. Are you okay, Mom? I sat beside him on the couch, suddenly exhausted. I should be asking you that question. They are your grandparents. And they are your parents, he pointed out. That must have been harder for you than for me. It was necessary, I said, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. Not just for you, but for me too. I have spent my entire life trying to earn their approval. It is time to stop. Jason leaned against my shoulder, a gesture he had not made since he was much younger. For what it is worth, I am really proud of you, Mom. His words, so simple and sincere, meant more than any approval my parents had ever withheld. In that moment, I knew we would be okay, whatever came next. 6 months later, on a warm June morning, Jason and I loaded the last of his belongings into my car for the drive to State University. His dorm room awaited along with the beginning of his pre-med journey. Did you pack your shower caddy? I asked, mentally reviewing our checklist. And your extra-long twin sheets? Yes, Mom, he laughed, securing his laptop bag in the back seat. For the 5th time, I have everything. So much had changed since that Christmas Eve confrontation. The immediate aftermath had been difficult, with extended family members taking sides and flying rumors. My sister Barbara had initially cut contact completely, though she had sent a stiff congratulatory card when Jason graduated high school in May. My mother had made tentative efforts at reconciliation, calling occasionally with careful conversation that avoided any mention of academics or achievements. She had even visited once, bringing a houseplant and making awkward small talk. My father remained distant, sending a check for Jason's graduation, but declining to attend the ceremony. Do you regret it? Jason asked, as we pulled onto the highway. Standing up to them, it kind of blew up the whole family. I considered the question carefully. No, I do not regret it. What I regret is not doing it sooner. The family dynamics were unhealthy long before that night. Sometimes systems need to break before they can heal properly. The truth was, the rupture had led to unexpected growth. Several family members had reached out privately to express support. My cousin Rachel confessed she had always felt the same pressure, but had never had the courage to challenge it. My Uncle Thomas had started calling regularly, our relationship deepening without my father's domineering presence. More importantly, Jason had flourished. Freed from the weight of his grandparents' expectations, he had finished his senior year with renewed confidence. His graduation speech as class vice president had moved me to tears, especially when he spoke about finding strength in authenticity rather than external validation. I keep thinking about Kyle, Jason admitted as we passed the halfway point to campus. Grandma mentioned he is struggling at Princeton. My mother had indeed shared that Kyle was on academic probation after his first semester. The pressure of maintaining perfection leading to anxiety and declining grades. Barbara and George had reportedly hired multiple tutors and a private counselor to address the situation. Different paths work for different people, I said. Kyle might need to find his own way, too. We arrived at the university campus by early afternoon. The orientation volunteers helped us unload the car and directed us to Jason's residence hall. As we arranged his belongings in the small but comfortable dorm room, his roommate, Tyler, arrived with his parents. The boys immediately hit it off, discovering shared interests in basketball and science fiction. We should grab dinner before I head back, I suggested, after the unpacking was complete. We found a casual restaurant near campus, sitting at an outdoor table in the pleasant evening air. "Are you nervous?" I asked, as we waited for our food. "A little," Jason admitted, "but mostly excited. The pre-med advisor already emailed about research opportunities for freshmen." As we discussed his upcoming orientation schedule, a familiar voice called Jason's name. We looked up to see Kyle approaching our table, looking thinner and less confident than he had at Christmas. "I thought that was you," Kyle said, stopping at our table. "I am visiting a friend who goes here." Jason recovered from his surprise quickly. "Good to see you, Kyle. Do you want to join us?" Kyle hesitated, then nodded. "If that is okay." Over dinner, the story emerged. Kyle had struggled with the transition to Princeton, the competitive atmosphere and pressure triggering anxiety attacks. After his first semester on probation, he had decided to transfer. "I am actually applying here for spring semester," he confessed. "To the regular pre-med program. Dad is furious, but I just cannot go back there." "The program here is excellent," Jason said without a hint of vindication. "And they have great support services. I could introduce you to my advisor when you visit for your interview." I watched with pride as my son extended compassion to the cousin who had mocked him just months earlier. This was the true measure of character that my parents had never valued properly. After Kyle left promising to text Jason about his application process, we finished our dinner in thoughtful silence. "That could have been me," Jason finally said, "if I had gone somewhere just to please Grandpa instead of where I actually fit." "You knew yourself better," I said. "That is wisdom many people never achieve." We said goodbye the next morning after his orientation breakfast. I held him tightly, this young man, who had taught me more about courage than anyone else in my life. "Call me any time," I reminded him. "And remember, I am proud of you, no matter what grades you get." "I know, Mom," he smiled. "That is why I will do great here." Driving home alone, I reflected on our journey since Christmas. The small apartment that had seemed so barren that night now represented something precious, a space where authenticity was valued over appearance, where love was truly unconditional. My phone rang through the car speakers, my mother's name appearing on the display. For a moment I considered ignoring it, then decided to answer. "Hello, Mom." "Amanda, I just wanted to check if Jason got settled okay at school." The genuine interest in her voice suggested another small step in our healing process. "Yes, he did. His roommate seems nice, and he is excited about orientation." "That is good," she said. "I was thinking, if you are not busy for Thanksgiving this year, perhaps you both might consider coming over. Just a small gathering, not the whole family." I did not answer immediately, weighing the invitation against the painful history. "You can think about it," she added quickly. "No pressure. And Your father and I have been talking. He is seeing someone, a counselor. It was not my idea, but after what happened with Kyle, he is trying. The admission surprised me. My father seeing a counselor, the man who believed psychology, was not real science. That is good to hear, I said carefully. Let me talk to Jason about Thanksgiving, but maybe, with some clear boundaries in place. After hanging up, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. Not about returning to the old family dynamic, which was irreparably altered, but about the possibility of building something healthier from the ruins. When I arrived home, I found a package waiting at my door. Inside was a framed photo of Jason and me from his graduation, along with a note from my Uncle Thomas. Proud of you both, it read simply. Family is about love, not achievement. I placed the photo on my mantel and looked around at the life I had built. It was not perfect or prestigious by my parents' standards, but it was authentic and filled with genuine connection. In standing up for my son that Christmas, I had finally stood up for myself as well. This Thanksgiving and Christmas would be different. Whether we spent them with my parents, with friends like Stephanie, or just the two of us, they would be based on mutual respect and unconditional love. That was the true gift that had emerged from last year's painful confrontation. Have you ever had to stand up to family members to protect someone you love? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and choosing authentic relationships over toxic expectations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is draw a line that protects those who matter most.